Great.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Cunningham, and I'm the AVP for Alumni Relations at Lehigh University. Welcome to our Mountain Talk. We are starting at 12:15 today. Normally we start at 12:30, but feedback from some of our regular Mountain Talk participants has said that sometimes you want more than just a half an hour. And we thought that this was one that would warrant a little bit extra time because the topic is so relevant. And I really thank Bill and Chris for giving up some time with us today to talk about thinking about your career in a pandemic. Are you just kind of bored because there's a pandemic? Are you thinking about other things, dreaming about other companies you could work at from the comfort of your own living room? Or is it pandemic related, or is it just a real career change that you need to make? So they're going to talk us through some of that. So as I mentioned, I'm here with Bill Glenn. He's class of 80 undergrad and got his MBA from Lehigh in 81 and is the chairman of Crenshaw Associates. And Chris Nadherny is one of his associates there. And the two of them will be, he did not go to Lehigh, but he also did not go to Lafayette. So the information you're getting from him is on the up and up. And we have Karen Kaczynski here, who works in our Center for Career and Professional Development to answer any questions that you may have about that. So the way this will work is they're going to present for about 15 minutes. And then we will turn it over to your questions. You'll use the chat function since there are now 64 of you, and it gets unwieldy if it's a verbal question asking. So type in the chat and I will read the questions aloud. You can either make your comments and questions available to everyone to see or just to the presenters. So those would just come to the four of us. So let's get started. Bill, you want to share your screen?
Great. Thanks, Jennifer, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you and your families have stayed healthy and safe and navigated through all of this as best as possible. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm an 80 and 81. I'm also a parent of a grad in 17 and 18. After Lehigh, I was really fortunate to go on to have a challenging and rewarding career at Procter & Gamble, Pepsi, and American Express. And importantly, one of my key experiences and learnings and things I grew to reinforce was that the ability to attract, develop, and retain people was the most critical factor to outpace business results. It's also personally for me extremely rewarding. And so after I left American Express as CEO of the global business travel business, given my passion and leadership experiences in talent management and human capital, I was fortunate enough to be in a position to acquire Crenshaw. Today's topic of navigating a career through the pandemic also includes our thoughts and insights on strategic career management in and outside of a pandemic. And we have about a 50-50 split today of pre and post 2000 alums, graduate students, faculty, and parents. And I hope our insights will bring value to everyone participating. So as Jennifer said, joining me is Chris Nadherny, who's an executive advisor, coach, and mentor at Crenshaw. He's also a former partner and practice leader for Spencer Stuart, which is a leading global executive search firm. So Chris has also authored the book, The Proactive Executive. So he's our expert in the area of career management. So without his background, we'll get started with the presentation. Also, no need to take notes. We'll have the deck available after today's session. Well, let me, okay. Quickly, Crenshaw's 35 years of unmatched experience. And to take away from this page, there are three main services: integration, new to company, executive coaching and development, and executive transition. And transition is folks who are looking for a specific next job, folks who want a broad career, maybe a portfolio career or different experiences, and also a directorship program. And I think what's important here is that we span the life cycle of a person's career and professional experiences. Some insight in today's marketplace, which is, I would characterize the tech bubble in the late 90s, 9/11 and financial crisis in 08, 09 were tragic, episodic, but really disruptive, but really episodic. Contrast that with what we've experienced the past probably 15 months with COVID-19, George Floyd, racial injustice, and you combine that with the future of work and all the changes that were being made in corporations and how people work are, yes, disruptive and tragic, but they really have a sustaining impact affecting people's careers. And if you look at 2020, it was really extreme disruption. And for corporations, there were really three phases: lights on, just trying to not even stabilize the business, but literally keep the lights on with policies, procedures, concerns about health and wellness. Phase two is about stabilizing and running. Phase three is new business models and growth algorithms. And so various companies and industries are in different phases, but all are affecting the executives. And if you look below the second bullet point, here are literally quotes from hundreds of executives and CEOs and boards that we've worked with, which is, some have said this is like PTSD. The pace is relentless. We're zoomed out. There's, importantly, personal and professional uncertainty about, are they going to stay with the company, or is there going to be a restructure? Do they want to retire? What to do with their career? And all this has turned into some unexpected turnover for corporations. And so that's the backdrop. I think it's important to think about how all of us are managing or have managed their careers. And I think the tagline is, most people, including senior executives, undermanage their careers, not necessarily mismanage it, but undermanage it. And so today we're going to talk about, should you change jobs during a pandemic? Strategic career management. How attractive a candidate are you? And there was a survey that some of you have been able to fill out, and we'll go through that, and an executive transition framework. And then we'll end with some questions and answers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Bill, thank you for teeing us up and that nice introduction. It's a real delight to be with everybody today. I think the first question that we were asked to give some suggestions on is, should you change jobs during a pandemic? And the answer to that is, it depends. And it depends on how unhappy, discontent, or underutilized you are, how marketable your experiences and skill sets are, which industry segments have you been working in. There are a number of segments that are going to come back more slowly than others. For example, if you are in hospitality or travel or entertainment. It also, whether you decide to change jobs, depends on the quality of opportunities that you uncover as the recovery continues to unfold. I do believe that in the coming months, over the next 3 to 4 months, as we get vaccines into people's arms, that you're going to see things open up increasingly and a greater array of opportunities. So in my mind, preparing to look for a job over the next 3 months is something that you may want to begin to do. A quick comment, I think the best time to look for a job is when you have one. The reason I say that is that you don't have the time and financial pressures that arise when you simply choose to leave without having another opportunity. And you need to keep in mind that if you do leave, that a job search is going to average 4 to 9 months. So you want to make sure that you have the right financial resources. Bill? Here's a quick exercise that we can go through. If you answer yes to 3 or more of the following questions, you should certainly consider a job change and prepare yourself for a job search. So the types of questions you should ask yourself are, have you stopped growing, developing new skills, or being challenged in your present role? Have you explored other internal growth opportunities, including lateral moves, and they're none to your liking? Has your compensation leveled out? Have you been in the same role for more than 3 years? Have your peers been promoted ahead of you? Is your organization or industry in a downturn? And I would say a secular downturn, not a short-term downturn. Has your employer stopped investing in your activities? Is your organization, company, or industry being disrupted by technology? So as you go through these, if you answer yes to 3 or more, again, I would suggest that you want to prepare a job search. So if you decide to go forward with a job search, what should you do? And these are the critical activities that Crenshaw is able to help you out with. You certainly need to define what your job search objectives are. And a lot of people don't do this. You need to clarify what your value proposition is in the market. In other words, what do you have to sell? Of course, craft a compelling resume, and we have lots of thoughts on that. Create a targeted outreach or networking program, and stay organized. Don't be overly reliant on job websites. At most, that ought to be 15, 20% of your effort, no more. You need to hone your interviewing skills as well as your virtual interviewing skills. And I think a basic concept to keep in mind here is to wear the headset of the buyer as opposed to you, the seller. Make sure that you accept the right opportunity. These are probably the most critical decisions that you make as you go throughout your career, accepting the right opportunity. Poor decisions about opportunities are going to decelerate the career. And then finally, especially during pandemic and everybody working remotely, you need to craft a thoughtful onboarding program. So if you go about this properly, and it's not easy if you haven't done it in a while, or if you have limited experience in doing so. This is where the Crenshaw's, their insights, process, and structure are designed to mitigate risk and expedite the most positive outcome for the individuals they work with. Bill mentioned strategic career management, which SCM is how I briefly annotated. It is a truth that 2/3 of professionals undermanage their careers at various points in time, resulting in professional deceleration. And what this causes is reactive or poorly thought out career moves, job hopping, poor market positioning, and skills that become obsolete. There are a number of reasons that people undermanage their careers. First of all, it's usually the sort of thing that you learn by going through the school of hard knocks. Now, the unfortunate thing about that is that by the time you've been knocked on the head several times, you've already decelerated your career. Experience tells us that 50% of professional success is up to you. It's self-determined by how thoughtfully and actively you manage your career, the skills that you decide to develop, where you decide to work, and the other various decisions that you make. Now, we know from our experience that strategic, proactive career management produces results. The types of results I'm speaking about are enhanced job satisfaction, more rapid advancement, and a higher return on the time, energy, and money that you invest into your career. Conservatively, this type of thinking produces 30% greater lifetime compensation. And as I get into 3 of the principles of strategic career management, I think you'll understand why that is. And 30% is a conservative figure. I think it can make a 40 to 50% difference in your ultimate compensation. And finally, strategic career management, in my experience, having assessed, interviewed, and presented probably 6,000 executives over 30 years, is that strategic career management is the difference between being a reasonable candidate versus a great candidate. Bill? Okay, let me provide you an actionable framework for strategic career management. It's about building a professional profile over time that is relevant, differentiated, and in demand. And it's the strength of your professional profile that determines your attractiveness and your value in the market. Now, in the diagnostic that was sent to you in advance of our presentation, it laid out and defined the various components in your professional profile. And these components are the same things that employers are assessing. Exhibited skill sets, knowledge and experience, soft skills, meaning presence, interpersonal communication and influencing skills, accountability, results and impact, stability of employment, too much versus too little. People can become stuck in companies or jobs. Their learning curve flattens. Maybe they aren't getting the types of opportunities within the organization. And if you've been at an organization for 8 years and you don't believe you're making as much progress as you can, you want to think about that. Okay. Now, I was with Spencer Stuart for 30 years. I was always being challenged. I was never bored. I was always taking on additional projects. So it depends in part on the situation that you're in. Now, too little stability, and this is really the death knell for job search, is being at a series of organizations for 1, 2, or 3 years, because it takes longer than that to integrate yourself and to produce results. Track record means your career progression, the quality of organizations that you've worked with, the energy and passion that you bring to what it is you do, your applied intelligence, and I think this is very similar to your learning agility. And then reputation, which really comes out in your references. Bill? So the first concept I shared with you was an actionable framework for strategic career management. Now let me talk about 2 additional concepts. And the next is positioning and differentiation. And a very good way to think about this is that throughout your career, you're positioned in one of 4 possible supply and demand quadrants, okay? You're either in a high talent demand, limited talent supply quadrant, which is an ideal place to be, or you're in a low talent demand, high talent supply quadrant, which you want to spend as little time there as possible. And I'm those 2 that are highlighted in red are the ones that I'm talking about today, because they're at opposite ends of the spectrum. If you are able to position yourself consistently throughout your career in or near a high talent demand, limited talent supply quadrant, that is a great strategic positioning. You're going to have less competition for positions. You're going to see more opportunities and better opportunities. You're going to experience more rapid advancement, and importantly, you're going to have greater compensation leverage. Bill?
I got it, Chris.
Okay. Go Mountain Hawks.
And engineers.
Okay, engineers. The next concept that I want to talk about, strategic concept, is that of making timely industry transitions. An estimated 50% of professionals transition industries. Okay, why do they do this? Well, they do it to broaden their experience and their professional profiles, reposition closer to the high demand, limited supply quadrant, or to better leverage their key foundational strengths. Okay, so how do you do this successfully? Well, the key to making industry transitions is your ability to observe, learn, adapt, and influence. And this came out of a very significant study that we did while I was at Spencer Stuart. And what we found was that the traits that best athletes have best athletes refer to individuals who are able to transition across several industries during their career. The types of traits that these individuals have are learning agility, the ability to deal with ambiguity, tenacity, willingness to listen, influencing skills, cultural and political sensitivity, change management aptitude, and innate curiosity. We also found that people who were put into these types of situations early in their career, for example, general management consultants, where they're consistently having to go into new client companies and figure out what's going on, and then observe, learn, adapt, and influence. Or think about, for example, a U.S. executive who is given an international assignment over in some foreign country where they've never been. Well, when they wake up the next morning, they don't even know where to get milk for breakfast. So they develop that observe, learn, adapt, influence behavior. The last bullet point here, when making your first industry transition, do yourself a favor and remove the risk by moving into a sector that has some nice overlap with your experience today. Okay, this could be because there's a similar business model, a similar customer base. Moving from A to C is a heck of a lot less risky than moving from A to L or A to Z. Next slide. Okay, here we are at the diagnostic. And so as you went through it, you noticed that the various components were more fully defined. And if you took the diagnostic in a truly objective manner, you're going to get a pretty good read on how strong your profile is in the market. The results can vary, right? A lower score may well indicate that you're much earlier in your career. So, low scores aren't bad unless you consider yourself well advanced in your career. Your professional profile is the composite of your experiences, track record, abilities, and personality. So let's see how you scored, what it means, and how you can become stronger. Okay. If you scored in the 85 to 100 point range, you are a very good to excellent candidate, and you're likely or should be on the radar of recruiting firms. If you scored in the 70 to 84 point range, you're a reasonable to good candidate for many opportunities. Now, you may find that you have some pretty stiff competition for the most attractive roles. If you scored in the 50 to 69 point range, you're a possible candidate, but probably likely not a finalist. So you need to identify, based on how you scored across components, where you have opportunity to further build your profile. If you scored in the 30 to 40 point range, as I said, you're in these last two and you're younger, you're earlier in your career, and it's to be expected. But the point is that there's lots of opportunity to improve and grow, and you need to be thoughtful and proactive in managing and shaping your career. If you're below 30 and not just starting your career, you should probably reassess a path that you're on and find a healthier path. Next bullet, or next slide. So here are some suggestions for making the most of your profile. I am a big believer in taking the time and taking the reflection to identify and understand what your core foundational strengths are. And these are the things that you do either innately or because of your education and training better than a high percentage of your peers, okay? So you want to be sure that you're in a role that's leveraging these foundational strengths. You also want to develop an action plan to try and address the deficient components in your professional profile. Now, there may be some areas that just because of the person you are, your upbringing or education, that are unfixable. And if that's the case, then what you need to do is identify other roles and settings where those deficiencies come less into play or that are going to be shored up by team members. Now, I have given you a very, very quick and somewhat, first layer overview of strategic career management. If you would like to know more, the reason that I wrote The Proactive Executive was to give a lot of advice and suggestions and all the insights that I accumulated over 30 years. Bill?
Great. Thanks, Chris. So just 2 more slides to close out, and then we'll open up for questions, which is, this is a wheel, we call it, of executive transition process. And you can see there are 4 phases. One is in-depth career planning, product development, meaning the executive or the employee or whomever is the product, building a campaign, evaluating an offer, and onboarding. And so this is mostly, as you'll see from other companies, not just Crenshaw, although I think we do it better than most, or better than all. It's a really comprehensive, rigorous program, and starts with a lot of what Chris talked about, assessments and understanding your capabilities, your skills, your appetite, and then essentially how to market it. And secondly is the coaching and advisory practice that we have, which is as detailed. And oftentimes we coach executives and employees who are early on in their career or at the later stages of their career to accelerate their careers by developing their leadership capabilities and performance. And it's very, very rigorous, but it does give aid to folks advancing their careers within a company, usually sponsored by a company, but within a company, to accelerate their careers and increase their attractiveness. And so with that, Jennifer, why don't we open up the Q&A?
Yeah, I have 2 questions related to the content. And we have a ton of questions, and we've got 16 minutes left. So I would advise that you kind of get through the question answers quickly so we can get more questions versus going deep onto specific questions. One is about the second to last slide. Why are some of the bubbles gray? Second to last, yeah.
Right. This is where we actually deploy experts in terms of career planning. So wealth planning, resume, LinkedIn, focus on private equity, and then onboarding programs. So we have advisors like Chris and mentors, and then we deploy experts to add to the program.
Okay. The next question was from Sarah. You're talking about the low demand, high talent quadrant. Would being laid off during the pandemic be in that low demand, high talent quadrant? Because things are a little bit different right now. So should she take that as a sign that she's low demand, high talent?
I have to know more, but I would suggest that she take a look at her skill sets, and you can get an idea of that by maybe taking a look at the number of opportunities that you see on the job boards or through LinkedIn. And if the number is pretty small, then it's either an issue of timing or it's an issue of positioning.
I don't, you know what, Jennifer, I'd also add to that, which is there are a lot of folks more senior and a lot of young folks right out of school, right out of Lehigh, right, that don't have a job right now because of restructuring. And so the marketplace is aware of it.
Okay.
And so it's time to just, as Chris said, be really, really planful. If you get laid off during the pandemic, everyone understands there's restructuring going on, right?
Right. So it's a little different than normal.
Yeah. And so you don't need to be defensive about it. It just is what it is. And I think, reflecting and doing the work that Chris described is really important.
Right.
I guess the other general point that I would add is I don't think it's ever been more important than it is now, because things change so quickly and there's so many different forces that if you're not thinking proactively, okay, you're going to find yourself reacting throughout your career.
Right. So this kind of leads into what Paul is getting at with a couple comments. He says, thank you for identifying an accurate label for my work life, undermanaged. And his question is around the direction and guidance from your educational institution, in this case, Lehigh, and from your employers. So my question to that statement is, how much should people be relying on, especially younger folks, on their career centers, on their schools? And then once they get employed, what is the responsibility of the employer versus the employee to manage their careers?
So, well, Chris, I'll start,
Okay.
which is students absolutely should be proactive with their career center. And Karen knows this, I experienced it. I have children, went to school, and I kept pressing them. They're there for a reason. They're there to help, right? And so it's really, really important that they get started early. Whether it's freshman or sophomore year, getting familiar, because you want to build towards an internship, right? Probably between your sophomore and junior year, especially between your junior and senior year, and then also for full-time employment. So it's very, very important.
Right, right. And now is probably the time to plug that we do have Lehigh Connect, which is a platform for alumni to connect with each other and with students. And I was thinking, Karen, maybe we can do a whole nother webinar just on that with some of the people who signed up here to take them through how to use Lehigh Connects and get those connections going. But sorry, Chris, you were.
No, Chris, one more thing, which is, I'd say it's a dual responsibility in terms of managing your career, right? I think it's important now people recognize that companies have been through a lot of change. So they may have been focused on talent and people and development before the pandemic. And I think you have to evaluate the culture of the company. Most companies will resume to that, right? Having leaders develop their people. And so that's important recognition. And the other thing is that you personally have to take responsibility for managing your career. It's very, very important.
Right. Asking for development opportunities and to go to conferences and take trainings and that.
Yeah, and I would say too, as Chris described a little bit, which is how do you navigate within a company and get broad-based experience? Because doing that, leveraging your skills and getting broader experience helps your career development and your attractiveness and candidacy.
And certificates and things are really coming. Lehigh's offering a ton of certificates now that could help people kind of reskill and upskill in that area, which kind of gets to Amy's point.
I'd like to add something here. I think career centers do a wonderful job with what they're supposed to do. But in terms of guiding you in your career or determining what positions you should take, how you should be developing your profile, that's, in my belief, the responsibility of the individual. And you have to take the time to do it. You have to take the reflection. You have to explore, and that has to be on your own initiative.
Gotcha. So Amy's question is, can you talk a little bit more about how to prioritize the areas to improve the PAD scores as you create an action plan?
Yeah, the ones that I would take a look at first are the ones where you scored the lowest. Those, if you can fix those are going to be your easiest gains.
Yeah. Okay. Jackie's question, Jacqueline, is about loyalty. So you had mentioned, how long have you been in your position? I think it was 3 years, that you haven't, if you haven't moved up. So is it working against people that they've been employed at my current job now for over 5 years in the same role? Back in the day, loyalty to a company was valued, but now that seems to have changed.
I think loyalty is still valued, but I think you have to look out for yourself. Okay. Nobody, your career is more important to you than it's going to be to anybody else.
Mhm.
I think that's right. I think, I don't know if there's a magic number of 3 years. In some companies, that's the path. And it used to be really, really short, right? That you should be moving. But I think it's, to Chris's point, it's managing your own, taking responsibility for your own career and evaluating, are you growing? I think that's the most important. You can stay in a role, but have other projects and assigned to you, and you keep growing. And I think that's the most important factor.
Well, just, even within the same role, some of the things that you can do, if you identify an issue that the organization is having, okay, well, take the initiative, if it's important enough, to form a task force or a committee, a cross-functional committee to tackle that. And in doing so, you're showing your, ability to identify problems, to bring together the right group of people and to forge a solution. So, I mean, that's leadership. And it also gives you exposure across the organization, which is a good thing.
Right. There's a couple questions here that are on a lot of people's minds too, about getting back into the workforce after staying home with kids. And also for someone who's been in the workforce for a long time, who's 60 plus in age, looking at new positions. Are there specific things that people, who have been, who are trying to change industries late in life or trying to get back into industries, back into the workforce after being out for a while?
Well, you really need to address those two situations individually, okay? If you are starting a family, okay, or have a family, if there's some way that you can keep a toe or a foot, in the market and active, even though it's only taking up so many hours, okay, I think you should try and do that. If you've been out entirely, right, it becomes more difficult to come back in where you at a level where you think you should be. But again, what you need to do in that type of situation is, reflect back on your prior experiences, achievements, accomplishments, and make those vivid. With the respect to the older individual, that is a challenge, because if an organization has the opportunity to hire somebody who has a longer runway, right, where they can get a bigger return on over time, that's just, I think, that's the way the world works. Now, if it's a 60-year-old who is looking for an encore career, right, or maybe it's a very talented individual who can go in and what was that movie with the where the older gentleman goes into this younger high-tech company?
I don't know.
Yeah, the intern.
The intern, right. That can be a fruitful area. The larger organizations are maybe going to be reluctant to bring in, but in many cases, those younger organizations need the maturity, the wisdom that they don't have internally.
And I would just add to that, which is companies, for folks who have left the workplace for whatever reason for a period of time and want to come back, there are a lot of companies hire back employees who have done that and recognize, and today more than ever, right? I mean, everybody's grown up. There's a lot more maturity about people's choices, and they just value experiences and, capabilities and skill sets. And that's important. As to the 60-year-old plus, there are a lot more opportunities out there than ever. I think Chris is right. To find your way back into a really position at an established large company is a little more difficult. but there are plenty of choices. And Chris mentioned Encore Career, and that's what we've done with a lot of executives now, which is
Right.
a portfolio career, board work, not for profit, some startups, the PE industry, PE segment. So there are a lot of opportunities.
Well, and the demographics are in favor of workers coming up with the, just not as many workers and more people retiring.
Yeah.
So the demographics are at least in our favor that
Yeah.
way.
But I wouldn't see anything as a barrier. I think the important is to make sure you've done the proper evaluation, and there are organizations out there that can help you.
Right, right. So Vincent's question about returning to the office environment over the next 3 or 4 months, turning that into career opportunities. What do you see? How is returning to the office? And a lot of companies are saying we're going to go, totally work from home, which opens up opportunities all over the planet. It opens up more opportunities for part-time and for flex work and all these things that workers have wanted for decades. So what, from your standpoint and people hiring, what are you hearing? Are they open to these more flexible arrangements? Will that be good for job seekers, or will it make the competition harder? What's the playing field?
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer. I think it depends on the sector and the company, very much so, right? Which is, there are, as you know, everyone's pretty much been working virtual. We've done a lot of onboarding integration, 100% virtual in very senior executives with global responsibilities, right, which is very, very difficult. But it really depends. And I think people will go back to the office, but I think there are jobs that are better suited and fine to work virtually. And I think that's been happening over years. I think this may have accelerated and may have companies rework their their real estate plans and their footprints, and make those decisions.
Yeah.
I think companies are going to be more flexible, but I don't think we've gotten to the point yet where we can say this is what it's going to be in the future. And there will be more flexibility, and I think it's up to the individual to decide, what sort of situation are they happiest, and do they do their best work in.
Yeah, we've seen there's a lot of, as I mentioned, PTSD, relentless pace, working from home, both managing personal and professional, gender agnostic, right? I mean, it's affected everybody. And also the assessments we do find that there are folks that need to be back in the office to touch and feel and walk the floor with their, in terms of leadership development. So,
right. So as you said, this is not episodic. This is going to be long-term. And so hang on to your hats. So I wanted to give Karen the last word. Karen, can you just talk a little bit about Lehigh Connects and how it can help with job seeking? We also have an alumni LinkedIn group that people can join. And then with Crenshaw, they are a sort of preferred job coaching associate with Lehigh. So can you talk about those 3 things?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone, and so glad that you're with us today. I just put a link into the Career Center website, and it's a link for our alumni of all the resources that are available to you. With regards to Lehigh Connects, I highly recommend that if you are not if you haven't joined the community, to please join. Anyone who is a part of the community has opted in and is saying they're willing to talk about careers and network. There's also job postings available through Lehigh Connect. So as an alum, you can share opportunities, but there's also other alums who are posting, or companies that are looking for Lehigh alumni posting to Lehigh Connects. With regards to the coaching, if you go to the website that I shared in the chat and you click on the Explore tab, there is information there on how to get connected with Crenshaw Associates. I think what's important today is this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more. And the questions that you asked were great, and this is an excellent opportunity to learn more. There is a you are provided a free consultation session as a Lehigh alum. And then services beyond that are discussed with Crenshaw and discounted rate for Lehigh alum. So, and Jennifer, I believe there was one other thing you asked me, and I apologize, escaping my brain.
It was LinkedIn group.
Yes, and absolutely to join the Lehigh University LinkedIn group and get connected there. I think Chris and Bill both said about the value of networking, and that I think the percent, you want to see a higher percent of networking in your job searching than just applying. So please take advantage of our wonderful alumni network. And I think you'll find that it's of great value to you during this time.
Yeah, we have 85,000 alumni around the world, and I hear so many stories of people that have reached out to, people that they maybe haven't spoken to in a while, their freshman year dorm mates, friends through your team or your classmates. Lehigh people are willing to help each other. So, do the work with Crenshaw Associates. Get your resume, but then also use our network. Seriously, like we do professional alliance networking events. We've got a Slack event with our tremendous Innovators Alliance quarterly. We're here for you. The Alumni Network is here for you, and as are Bill and Chris.
Yep. So. And there's the contact. So thanks very much, Karen, Jennifer.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
Karen
it.
and Jennifer.
Great.
Yes.
Great
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Have a good one. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.